man named Carl Icahn.
Ackman, he does pump and dumps. He's got one of the worst reputations on Wall Street. And I'm telling you, he's like the crybaby in the schoolyard.
And he's talking about another man named Bill Ackman, who we hear from here.
Carl Icahn thought, you know what, this guy's roadkill on the hedge fund highway. I'm never going to have to worry about this kid again. He's not going to even have the resources to sue me. This is not an honest guy, and this is not a guy who keeps his word, and this is a guy who takes advantage of little people.
These two are fighting on CNBC in what I believe might be the most watched segment on CNBC ever. And they are supposed to be fighting about a company called Herbalife. But things got way off the rails, and this fight became very personal. In fact, if you heard at the very top of this clip, people saying, that was live traders on the New York Stock Exchange watching this interaction happen on a slight delay at the stock exchange, making those noises like they were watching a boxing match or a damn WWE fight. That is how crazy and epic this was at the time, and still today. You watch this full interaction, it's a 30-minute segment on CNBC, and you almost can't believe it's real.
I told Carl after the whole thing, he called me up, and he literally said, Bill, we can be friends now. And I simply said to him, I said, look, Carl, you are no friend of mine, and that was it.
I never said that I want to be friends with you, Bill. I wouldn't be friends with
Carl.
you. And you said to me you'd like to be friends so that we could invest together.
Carl, I have no interest. Do you think I want to invest with you? Okay, let's move on.
I would invest with you.
Let's
you were
move
the
on.
last man on earth.
It's so crazy. It's like a billionaire's version of I'm not touching you. I wouldn't invest with you. I wouldn't invest with you. I wouldn't invest with you if you were the last person on earth. There's something so juvenile about it, but it's hilarious because it's too I think Icahn was 70 years old when this is going down. Ackman's 50. They're both worth $10 trillion. And recently, this fight, both the decades-old fight between Icahn and Ackman, has come back into the spotlight, and specifically Herbalife has come back into the spotlight. This is truly one of the best business stories of all time, so we gotta talk about it. Okay, first, I would love to talk about Carl Icahn and Bill Ackman as individual people because they are both such characters, and they are so similar and yet so different. First, Carl Icahn. Carl Icahn was born during the Depression, born and raised in Queens, New York, if you couldn't tell by everything about him. He is such a Queens boy. It is unbelievable. The accent, the attitude. Grew up not with a lot of money. Tough school, tough kid, as he would describe it. He describes beating kids up in the schoolyard. I actually believe he said beating the little Jewish boys up in the schoolyard, which is not really something you're allowed to say today, though, to be fair, Carl Icahn is also Jewish, so it makes it a little bit more okay. In any case, Carl really made a name for himself in the 1980s as a corporate raider. He is seen as the seminal corporate raider. So he would buy up lots of shares of a company, enough that he could get a seat or maybe multiple seats on the board of the company. And then he would force change if he could. He would try to force changes at the company. Sometimes that meant getting rid of the existing management. Sometimes it meant getting rid of existing board members. Oftentimes it meant laying off workers. The classic things that people think about when they think of Wall Street coming in and hurting the little guys. That definitely, at his worst, Carl Icahn is a confrontational bully, and he absolutely went into companies, stripped them for parts, pushed them into bankruptcy at times, whether he meant to or not, and fired a lot of workers. At his best, however, Carl Icahn is funny, and he's charming, and he's actually doing Wall Street a service and doing American businesses a service by holding them to account. And this is how he would describe it. He actually agrees. He has said he agrees with people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren when they talk about CEO compensation. He thinks that Wall Street CEOs, many of them, are wildly overpaid for not doing a good job. So he sees his role as coming in and holding boards to account, holding those CEOs to account, making them perform better. He has done an incredible job at extracting value for both himself, but also for shareholders, which include pension funds and retirement funds. So he would make the case, I'm not just benefiting wealthy people in that sense. And that's true. Carl Icahn is a complicated figure. Like all of us, he contains multitudes. Now, Ackman, on the other hand, Ackman was born 30 years after Carl Icahn. He was born to a rich family in Chappaqua, New York. Ackman's father was a real estate investor, and while Carl was maybe picking physical fights with kids on the schoolyard, Ackman was picking intellectual fights with his father. Ackman bet his dad all of his bar mitzvah money that he would get a perfect score on the SAT verbal, which he did not do. Ackman apparently, I guess, recounted this story to Vanity Fair, which is how we know about it now, which speaks to Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman at his worst is arrogant and sanctimonious and self-righteous and polished in a way that can seem elitist when compared to a Carl Icahn who, despite his many billions, still has the scrappy Queens New Yorker vibe. Ackman at his best, however, is also brilliant and has picked some really valid fights. Again, holding companies to account that need to be held to account. He had a very famous fight with the MBIA, the Municipal Bonds Insurance Association, years before the 2008 financial crisis that in many ways predicted the 2008 financial crisis and was trying to clean up some of those ills before 2008 happened, which of course he wasn't able to stop the 2008 financial crisis. But the point is, Bill Ackman similarly has made some really good bets that have actually been socially beneficial, including the one we're going to talk about today, in my view, which is Herbalife. So these two men are fighters in different ways. They have different temperaments, different personalities, but they are fighters. And when they came together in a clash in the early and mid 2000s, it was electric. Now, we're going to get to Herbalife specifically in just a minute. I do want to set the foundation for the fight over Herbalife because these two had history, and this is what they were battling it out about on CNBC in the clip we showed at the top. Now, Ackman recently talked about his history with Carl Icahn on the Lex Fridman podcast, and his telling is something like this. In 2003, Ackman had shares in a company called Hallwood Realty. Now, Ackman was looking to shut down his existing hedge fund at the time. He was dealing with a lot, so he was looking to just sell off the Hallwood Realty shares. Now, he was willing to take a discount for them because, again, he was shutting down his fund. He didn't have the time and the energy to do what he knew needed to be done to extract full value out of it, so he just wanted to sell it off. Now, according to Ackman, he had multiple buyers who were interested. He had a couple of buyers who wanted to give him all cash for the shares at a slightly higher price point, I think $85, $90 a share, and then Carl Icahn, who was interested, and Carl was willing to give him $80 a share. But Carl was also willing to give him what they referred to as schmuck insurance. So the idea here for Ackman was, look, I need to look good for my investors. I don't want to sell you this for $80 a share and have you turn around and sell it for $150, and now I look like an asshole and I look like I didn't do right by my investors. So Carl Icahn, again, this is according to Bill Ackman, Icahn says, okay, you know what? I'll give you $80 a share, and then if I sell the shares in the next 3 years, I'll give you 50% of the profits of the difference of whatever I sold it for. So there you go. You can look good for your investors, and this can be that. Now, Icahn claims that Ackman knew he was never actually going to get the 50% profits. Icahn claims that they had some sort of conversation, that there was a handshake understanding that, like, look, man, the way I'm going to do this is Icahn speaking, like, the way I'm going to do this is not that I'm just going to go and resell these shares in some way. So you're not going to get this 50% profit, right? I may even buy the company myself. I'm going to do various things that are going to make it so that you're not going to get these 50% profits. Now, this is how Icahn was imagining it. And he said that he and Ackman had this understanding. But unfortunately for Icahn, they also had a written contractual agreement on top of whatever handshake deal that Icahn felt they had that did not say any of that. That quite clearly said, if Icahn makes money on these shares in any number of ways, if he transfers them in any number of ways within 3 years after this original deal with Ackman, Ackman would get paid his 50%. And Ackman goes to great lengths to describe the pains that he went to work on this contract to make sure that it was ironclad, so that there was no confusion around it, that Icahn couldn't wriggle out of it. He talks about, I included examples in the document so that it would be so clear cut.
There's a simple example in the agreement. You never see a lawyer. I told the lawyers I wanted to put an example, and they said, no, don't put an example in. You know, we'll just use words. I said, we can use words, but I want to have an example. I want to make sure there's no confusion here.
And yet, nevertheless, when Icahn did, in fact, in a way, sell these shares within the 3-year time frame, he had no plans, and he didn't give Ackman the 50%. So Ackman sued him in a legal battle that would go on for nearly 10 years. Okay, we are talking about two billionaires, and they are arguing over $9 million. That's it. Now, what's so crazy about this is you have two billionaires, who are now fighting, who are in a protracted, like, decades-long legal battle over $9 million. But it speaks so well to each of their characters. Like, they are both fundamentally fighters. And in fact, they're two people who like the fight even more than they like the money. And they stand on principle. I mean, Icahn calls Bill Ackman sanctimonious. You could also call him principled. And Icahn himself is clearly somebody who has principles and believes on principle. He did not want to pay this money to Bill Ackman. He believed they had a handshake deal. Ackman believed otherwise. In any case, after almost 10 years of this battle, Ackman finally won. Ackman sued Icahn. Icahn appealed the decision, would drag it out to appeal the decision. Ackman would win again. Icahn would appeal again on a different grounds. Whatever. The point is, it took a long time, but finally they reached the end of the road, and Icahn lost. And in 2011, he paid Bill Ackman, and really Ackman's investors, $9 million. And so this sets the stage for Herbalife, because it was just 1 year after this settlement finally happened that Bill Ackman began to publicly disparage and short Herbalife. And by short, I mean bet against the stock. And with this flashy public shorting of Herbalife, Icahn senses an opportunity. Now, when people talk about Herbalife, they often will shorthand it and say Herbalife is a nutrition company. But Herbalife is a nutrition company like Hostess is a bakery. Like, sure, I'm sure baking is somewhere in this process in a way. Let's not pretend it's like your mom and pop bake shop down the corner that makes apple pies with love, Similarly, Herbalife has elements of nutrition that it inserts in its synthetic weight loss shakes, but you're definitely better off just like eating an apple and some broccoli. But what's most important about Herbalife is not actually its products themselves. It's the way that Herbalife sells these products through a network of what they call distributors. So distributors, will buy products from Herbalife at wholesale prices, so at discounted prices. And then those individuals are supposed to go off and then sell the products to other people at a retail price, and the distributor will net part of the profit from that sale. However, those distributors are also supposed to go out and recruit other distributors to come on board to Herbalife. Now, if any of this is like confusing or sounds like, what the hell, why make this so complicated? Well, congratulations. This means that you have never fallen prey to an MLM. But what I'm describing is a very traditional, typical multi-level marketing structure, which is that you have these salespeople, but instead of them being just normal salespeople that you pay a salary and a commission to, they actually are also a customer of yours. They buy product from you to then try and resell, and they also help you recruit more of these salespeople / frankly, customers. If you think this looks an awful lot like a pyramid scheme, it's because it is very close to a pyramid scheme. Now, technically in this country, multi-level marketing companies are legal, while pyramid schemes are not. And whether or not Herbalife is a multi-level marketing company or a pyramid scheme is at the heart of this story. Because in 2012, when Bill Ackman begins heavily shorting Herbalife stock and publicly disparaging it, he is making one key claim. Herbalife is an illegal pyramid scheme that will be shut down and its stock will go to zero. Bill was not just betting on the stock to go down, he was betting on it to go to zero. Now, he was making other claims about Herbalife as well, and he put on hours worth of presentations publicly, privately to other investors, making the case that this was a pyramid scheme, but also just an all-around horrible company. There were documents from Herbalife demonstrating that Herbalife intentionally targeted low-income neighborhoods, low-income communities, and low-income people, even low-income countries where people lived on less than $2 a day, to promote themselves as this entrepreneurial endeavor, as this way to live out the American dream wherever you were in the world, this way to lift yourself up by the bootstraps, become an entrepreneur, work and live on your own terms, and make a lot of money. Of course, if you know anything about multi-level marketing schemes, or certainly pyramid schemes, you know the truth, which is that the vast majority of people who participate in things like this do not make any money. In fact, there's one study that suggests that 98% of Herbalife distributors lose money. And what is so twisted about this is you are talking about a company that is now saying that we know targets low-income people who already cannot afford to lose money, who are trying to make money, and in that process sells them something that they know will ultimately probably cause them to lose money. And this was Bill Ackman's point. This company is a fraud, it is a scam, it is immoral.
First of all, what are you accusing Herbalife of?
Of being a pyramid scheme.
we believe Herbalife is a pyramid scheme.
The government would have to look into this and conclude that it is a pyramid scheme that would send the stock to zero. What Bill was not expecting was that Carl Icahn would come in and take the other side of this bet. Carl first started buying Herbalife stock in early 2013. Now, initially he started buying stock and he was not disclosing the fact that he was buying stock. He was publicly speaking out against Ackman. He was publicly speaking out in support of Herbalife, but he wouldn't disclose whether or not he had actually bought Herbalife stock or how much of it he had bought. But over time, this changed. Over time, he was buying so much Herbalife stock that he had to take a public position on it. He ended up buying so much Herbalife stock that he got 5 seats on the Herbalife board. And he said that this was a legitimate business, that they were providing job opportunities to people in all parts of the country and all parts of the world. Herbalife was doing billions of dollars of revenue a year. Cristiano Ronaldo was one of their spokespeople. And Herbalife issued reports saying that 97% of Herbalife products were bought by end users, end consumers that wanted to consume the product itself, which will be important in just a minute when we talk about technically what is the difference between an MLM and a pyramid scheme. And like before, this battle was epic. It raged for years. Both men going on cable news programs, speaking to investors, Ackman in particular going so hard, Ackman registering the domain name factsaboutHerbalife.com, where he would compile resources and information, leaked documents he had gotten from Herbalife whistleblowers, talking about the bad business practices that they employed. A documentary, Ackman funded and made a documentary called Betting on Zero, talking about his fight against this company. And there were some really damning things that came out about it. I mean, you had leaked video footage of senior members of the Herbalife team acknowledging that they knew that the vast majority of distributors would never make money selling their products.
Herbalife business model at this point in time is not based on customers purchasing. It's based on distributors purchasing volume. If that is the Herbalife business model, that's the way that it works.
And after years of this battle, 5 years that Bill Ackman held a basically billion-dollar short position on Herbalife, and Carl had a similarly strong long position on Herbalife, which means he owned the stock. He thought it was going to do well. After 5 years, Bill was finally forced to concede initial defeat. Bill had been short squeezed enough. He didn't want to risk losing more money for his investors, and he was forced to close out his Herbalife position, losing $1 billion for his company in the process, while Carl Icahn, on the flip side, made $1 billion on this bet. But the story doesn't end there, because more recently, Ackman is back, saying that he has won a psychological victory in the Herbalife war, even if he lost all that money years ago. And Icahn recently said this: Ackman never realized he was right about Herbalife for the wrong reasons. And in this game, that can cost you a great deal of money. And I've thought a lot about what Carl Icahn means by this quote, and I think it gets to the heart of this fight, and it gets us to this fundamental question, which is Herbalife a pyramid scheme? Now, the difference, technically and legally speaking, the difference between a pyramid scheme and an MLM can be understood like this. An MLM has an end consumer who actually wants the products that are being sold by the company, whereas a pyramid scheme fundamentally has no end consumer that actually wants the product. The entire business is propped up simply by people recruiting other people, recruiting other people, recruiting other people all around a product or a thing that nobody actually fundamentally wants. So this brings us to that statistic I mentioned earlier. Herbalife has put out studies claiming that 97% of their product volume is done by people who actually want the products themselves, not just distributors who buy it to maintain some sort of status or tier within the distributor network. Now, I don't know that I entirely believe those figures. Herbalife claims that they have a lot of their distributors, a lot of the people in their program are distributors simply because they want to get Herbalife products at discounted rates. But it feels like that also means it'd be pretty easy to manipulate these numbers. If you have a distributor who's buying products from you because the distributor wants to resell them and make some money, it's probably easy for you to claim as a company or lie as a company and claim that that distributor actually bought it because they wanted to use it for themselves. So I'm not really sure how they determine that 97% of their product volume is done by people legitimately wanting to use these products. But I do believe that there is a substantial portion of their revenue, a substantial portion of their product sales does actually come from people who drink these Herbalife shakes and eat these Herbalife soups. And part of the reason I believe that is because the FTC did a multi-year investigation of Herbalife. And at the end of that, they produced a admittedly scathing report on Herbalife, a scathing report on this company. But they did come just shy of calling it a pyramid scheme. They opted not to sue Herbalife, not to shut Herbalife down, not to call it a pyramid scheme, to validate that it was a legitimate business, but that there were some serious problems. And so what the FTC did do, and this was in 2016, was pretty interesting, which is that they levied a massive fine, a $233 million fine against Herbalife, the money of which would be reused to pay the Herbalife victims, which was the words of the FTC, the victims getting repaid by this $233 million fine. And they also said that Herbalife needed to very much retool, almost entirely redo the way they do their business and put a lot more of the incentives and the emphasis on selling the actual product, as opposed to the emphasis and the incentives being on recruiting more members for this network. And this in many ways validates Bill Ackman's argument that Herbalife is a immoral, exploitative, gross business with gross business practices. And if he had made a bet against Herbalife just on that basis, he almost certainly would have won. This is going to bring us back to Carl's point that he was right for the wrong reasons. But here's the very interesting thing. After the FTC issues this scathing report in which they fine the company $233 million and they say you need to overhaul your business practices, the stock for Herbalife went up, which is wild to think about. In most normal contexts, a business gets news like that, the stock would nosedive. It would be terrible news for the company and for the business. But the thing is, expectations are everything. Markets move on expectations. Bill Ackman had set the expectation that the stock wasn't just going down, that it wasn't just a bad business, that it was an illegal business, that was a pyramid scheme, and that was going to zero. He named the documentary Betting on Zero. And in that context, news like this out of the FTC was actually perceived as good news for Herbalife. The Herbalife CEO, Michael Johnson, even spun this as good news. When he made an announcement about this, he was like, great news, guys. We've settled with the FTC.
Hey, we've got great news. We've reached an agreement with the U.S. Federal Trade Commission that ensures that our mission to improve people's lives will continue to thrive. I have to tell you, this is really good news. And it comes at a time when our business is growing bigger and better than ever before.
Like, as if this scathing report about his company was actually positive news, but the truth is that's how it was perceived from a business perspective, because it was better than the outcome that Bill Ackman had set people up to believe was possible and even likely. And I think this is what Carl Icahn means when he says that Ackman was right but for the wrong reasons, which can cost you a lot of money in this business. Bill Ackman was right to short Herbalife stock. He was right that it was an immoral company, that it was exploitative, and that it needed to be investigated and that serious action would be taken against it. But he was wrong to make the short on the basis of it being a pyramid scheme. He was right, but for the wrong reasons. Now, why am I rehashing this 10-year-old business fight now? Well, it's back in the news a little bit, and Bill Ackman is declaring a psychological victory in his Herbalife fight. First of all, the company is not doing well. Share prices have absolutely plummeted over the last 6 years. They're now down under $9. But also, Bill is saying that he has gotten word that the FTC had commissioned an expert at UC Berkeley to do a study on Herbalife, and that this Berkeley professor had determined that Herbalife was in fact a pyramid scheme on the basis of the distributor quit rates. Now, Bill says he has never actually seen this study. He is prompting Twitter and folks to go out and find this study. And he claims that the FTC ignored this study and came just shy of calling Herbalife a pyramid scheme because they were intimidated by Herbalife's legal team, which included a man named David Boyce, who's very notorious. David Boyce actually represented Theranos at one point. So folks who have read Bad Blood or read the Theranos story might remember that David Boyce was the man intimidating the Theranos whistleblower. In any case, the FTC, Bill Ackman says, was intimidated by trying to take on a legal battle with Herbalife and their lawyers. They opted for this lesser outcome in which there would be this fine that would repay victims, in their words, and would require Herbalife to change their practices. And Bill is claiming this as victory for himself. Now, I feel a little bit more complicated about this. The truth is, Herbalife was required to change a lot of the ways it did business back in 2016. And though it has continued to do very shady things and has also had to settle cases with the SEC and the DOJ, it is a company that has continued to make a lot of money. Even last year, with the stock down as bad as it is because investors are not happy with its performance, it did $5 billion in net sales last year in 2023, which is a lot. But I totally agree with Bill that this is an immoral, bad company, and I would like it to not exist. In any case, the real moral of this story is, I guess, probably don't take on Carl Icahn or Bill Ackman, but also don't short stocks, kids. It is never a good idea to take on bets where if you are right, but for the wrong reasons, or you're right, but just not in the right time frame, you can lose $1 billion, which is the thing that Bill Ackman has learned the hard way, though he has learned it, and he does not take on short positions anymore. As a final note, Bill Ackman and Carl Icahn do seem to have made up. They have a cordial relationship. Bill Ackman has had Carl Icahn over to his house before, and I think there is a begrudging respect between these two titans, these two men who will never back down from a fight. All right, folks, that is our episode for today. I hope you did enjoy. If you do, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking, commenting below, and I will see you next time.